Okay, so hey there guys. So today's video is going to be my October favorites. I honestly keep on forgetting what month it is at this that I'm usually talking about at this point because I just feel like it gets faster and faster every month to where we get to the point where I need to film my favorites video again, and it's just literally crazy that the time just flies by. Sorry, I'm just constantly adjusting. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about my favorites. So, honestly, again, I don't really have too many favorites to talk about. I do have quite a few eyeshadow palettes to talk about, though. So, we're going to start out with eyeshadows. We always start with eyeshadows. Let's talk about the Halloween palettes that I used the most last month. And these are the four that I went into the most. Of course, the first one is the Oden's Eye and Angelica Nyquist Trick or Treat palette because I wanted to use this as much as possible in the month of October, and I have dipped into it a couple of times this past month as well in November. But this palette, you guys, this has easily become one of my favorite palettes I've gotten this year. This is the Oden's Eye quality that I love. The pigmentation of the mattes in here is so spectacular, and the shimmers are so freaking gorgeous on the lids. Honestly, I don't care what people say. Oden's Eye shimmers, there's just something about them that look so beautiful on the lids, and I really did enjoy mostly all the shimmers in here. The only shimmer, I mean, it's beautiful, but the only shimmer that's a little bit more difficult to work with is this shade Crypt Keeper. It goes on the lid beautifully, but it's very piecey and flaky, so it can easily transfer, and also you can get quite a bit of fallout underneath your eyes. But it's still beautiful on the lid, and it still lasted. Like, it's not like it transferred off my lid. I'm just saying, like, it can be a little bit difficult to put on the lid because it's going to transfer to the crease or underneath your eyes. But literally such a stunning palette. I think that she did such an incredible job with this collection. I wasn't even fully intending on picking up anything from this collection, and then I saw the color stories of these palettes, and then I was like, I think this is probably my favorite color story that she's ever done. I really love the Hella palette as well, but this one is such a fall palette, and it's such a beautiful fall to winter palette, but you can also wear these tones in, like, I probably wouldn't wear this until the fall, honestly. It's a really good quintessential fall palette. This jack-o'-lantern shade is so ridiculously saturated, and so is this green, and so is the red, and these deeper shades are absolutely stunning. These reds are some of the best reds I've ever worked with. They blend out so easily, and I just have really been enjoying my time with this palette. So I think my favorite shade in the palette, though, is this shade right here, Magic Potion. This is such a stunning shimmer on the lid. It's kind of the oddball of the palette, and I like that Oden's Eye puts in just like sometimes a random colored of shimmer, but they usually really think about like the matte selection in their palettes, but sometimes they'll do like a different twist and put like a different shimmer in there that you wouldn't think to pair with other mattes. And I feel like that's such a better way of getting people like a little bit out of their comfort zone, or trying a color that they think wouldn't go with other colors that they have in the palette. I feel like that's a better way of getting people to like kind of try something different rather than just throwing a bunch of random colors together and hoping it'll work out. Like, I like palettes where the color story is laid out for me, but also if I decide to go not so monochromatic, I can pair whatever mattes together and they're still gonna work on the eyes, and that's why I love Oden's Eye so much. So this shade Jack-o'-lantern is stunning, and this shade Candy Apple and the green. I'm just gonna swatch some of the matte shades first, and also like these mattes are insanely good. So there's the orange, there's the red, and there's the green. Super pretty. I'm just going to do finger swatches. They're super opaque, and you can clearly see how opaque they are on the lids as well. And then this shade, Magic Potion. Stunning. My absolute favorite shade, though, besides that one, is the red shade. I'll just swatch the 3 shades. Y'all know I was going to swatch anyway, but this is also, like, so Christmassy as well that I'm actually probably going to be pairing this palette with the Merry Christmas palette from last year. So this one is Magic Potion, this one is Trick or Treat, and this one is Witch's Brew. I always try to call the green Venom because the color is very similar to the shade that she had in her Hella palette. But I just think it was such a cool idea to bring back Hella for Halloween. It just makes perfect sense. She is like the god of the dead, and, well, goddess of the dead. And I love it. It's just beautiful, and I am just excited to go back into this palette again. I've used it quite a bit, and I love it. So, yeah, that's everything I have to say about that guy. So that is the first one. I have so much shit in front of me. It's not even funny. Okay, next up, let's talk about some ColourPop palettes. I'm going to talk about the Halloween palettes first. So these were the 3 that I used the most this month, not just because they're ColourPop, but just because it ended up working out that way, that I ended up reaching for all 3 of these way more than my other Halloween palettes besides the Trick or Treat one. I didn't use my Waiting Room palette or my Cursed Cosmetics palette or my Hip Dot Addams Family palette. I just decided to use these in the month of October. So, quick shout out to the Nightmare Before Christmas palette. I used this probably like 3 times this past October. Like, there was a couple looks that I wanted to do with this palette again, and I realized that I really, really love this palette. Not because it's like the most, like the first color story that comes to mind when you think of Nightmare Before Christmas. This is a great cohesive palette, and I love this palette way more than the Alice in Wonderland palette or the Snow White palette, just because it has depth and it has like way more different colors than ColourPop usually puts in their palettes, especially even collab palettes. But I love that you have this whole row of grays, then you have these beautiful shimmers, and then you have these really pretty, like, deeper pinky, orangey shades. And I wouldn't think to put pink and gray together, but trust me, it looks so good with this palette. I don't know if you can get this one anymore, but it's such a good one. I did my orange look again with this palette, and then I used the top row here on Halloween because I decided to get myself a Nightmare Before Christmas sweatshirt this Halloween finally, and I wore that literally every single day until Halloween, or I think after that too, and I'm definitely going to wear that like all through December. And I wore the top row like a cool tone look with 0 on the lid, and it was so pretty. And then I also wore this shade, Frog's Breath, when I went to Medieval Times. It's just a great palette, you guys, and I absolutely love it. So speaking of that Frog's Breath shade, I'll talk about the Hocus Pocus 2 palette first. So I did use this palette a couple of times as well. I actually was only able to do one full look using this palette. The other 2 times I paired it with the Nightmare Before Christmas palette, actually both times. So the first look that I did, I used most of these matte shades, all of the matte shades in here actually, and then I put Frog's Breath on the lid because originally I wanted to give this shade Wicked Ways again a shot again on my lids. It just does not stick to my lids, and for some reason this is the only dud shade in this whole palette. Out of all the palettes I'm talking about, this is the only shimmer that's bad. Literally out of all the ColourPop palettes I'm talking about. It just does not adhere to the lid. So, but I ended up doing the green look with this palette as well. But the reason why I'm talking about Frog's Breath is that I decided to use that shade and put it over this shade because then it was pigmented because the Nightmare Before Christmas shimmers are great. And I was like, well, this is pretty underwhelming. So it's just a crap shade. I don't know what else to tell you. But the green, I did the green look. These greens were so pretty. And I was really wanting to do a green look with these shades during October again. And also, this was the Halloween palette that I picked up last year. So I wanted to use it quite a bit this past October. And so that's why I wanted to do the green look. And it was so pretty. I also did use this palette probably like once or twice before October this year. I did like the orange look before, but anyway. And then I paired these three shades with the Nightmare Before Christmas palette on Halloween, and I used like this gray on the lower lash line and this one in the inner corners, and it was so pretty. I think I used some of the black too, or maybe it was just these two grays and the this for my inner corners, and it was so pretty. So I decided to use this palette quite a few times as well. I also wore this on the day that me and my friend had a Halloween movie marathon, and we were gonna watch Hocus Pocus 2, but we ended up only watching the first one because we only had time for one more movie after we went out to dinner. Because it was like 11 something after we finished Hocus Pocus, or like, I think it was like 11:30, and I was like, we definitely can't watch another one because it was like 11:30 at night and I had to get home at some point. But we watched 3 movies. So we ended up watching the first one, and then the next day I wore the Hocus Pocus Gather Round Sisters palette, and I watched Hocus Pocus 2 that night myself. That was the day before Halloween. So it was like I wore the Hocus Pocus palette on the day I watched Hocus Pocus 2, and I wore the Hocus Pocus 2 palette the day I watched the first movie. So you obviously had to hear that whole story to get the full effect and the full background on why I wore which palette on which day. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So anyway, with this palette, I think I did the red look earlier this month. I forgot what I was going to when I wore that, but I think I did the red look. Then I also did a cooler tone, like brown look with it on, I think that was the only other time I used it. I think I only used it twice. I think I also used it combining a couple of shades with the Hocus Pocus 2 palette, because I do like combining both of them quite a lot, especially in the month of October. I like pairing them together. But I ended up using this shade as well with some of the more cooler tone neutrals. And I think that was it. I think I only used this shade and this shade this past month. But I've used this palette so much, and this is like my most used Halloween palette ever. And I think it was my first Halloween palette to my collection when it first came out. And this palette broke the internet. So, I don't think there's been a ColourPop launch since then that has been quite as popular as that one. I know the Haunted Mansion one was pretty popular, but I didn't end up getting anything from that. I'm not really a huge Haunted Mansion person. But me and my friend actually did watch the new one on our Halloween movie marathon day. We watched Haunted Mansion, Halloween Town, and Hocus Pocus. He had never seen Hocus Pocus fully, so I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to watch that too. But neither of us had seen the new Haunted Mansion, so we wanted to watch it. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great, but it was okay. So yeah, those are all the Halloween palettes I used. And then the last ColourPop palette I wanted to talk about is, I have been using this so much since I've gotten it. This is probably my most used palette besides the Trick or Treat palette in the past 2 months. This one and the Trick or Treat palette are definitely the two I've reached for the most, and that is the ColourPop 1111 palette. I love this palette, you guys. There's just something about this palette that is just so subtly beautiful, even more so than the Natasha Denona palette. I don't really consider this a dupe for the Natasha Denona palette. I think that this palette is much more warmer in tone, has a lot more depth and dimension, like I said with the bottom row the last time I talked about this palette. It has this whole row of deepening mattes, and that always like makes me want to use a palette so much more because I love depth and dimension in my mattes. And I've done some beautiful looks with this palette, But some of the mattes are very soft and very sheer. But once you pop one of the shimmers on your lid, it's just so angelic and just so simply beautiful, and it's so sparkly on your lid that the shimmer stands out on its own. It's just such a pretty palette. I've been absolutely loving it, and I love that I've been doing different color combos with the mattes. It just looks like a boring palette, but honestly, it's so pretty. So I've used like this shade, and this shade again. I only need to use these two again. I actually was going to wear this palette today, but I decided to wear the next palette that I'm going to talk about. But it's just gorgeous. I just can't get enough of it, and I think it's beautiful. So I didn't swatch any of the ColourPop palettes for you guys because you guys have seen those like a million times. I didn't have to swatch those again. I love the gold shade in here, and they're just super pretty. I really want to wear this Reflect shade again. So we have Reflect, Manifest It, and Balance, and they're just really, really pretty. I don't know what to tell you, but you see how reflective those are in the light? Like, they're almost as pretty as the Odin's Eye. I mean, the Odin's Eye are definitely more sparkly, but when you look at these, they're just so much more shimmery than you think they would be, and they're so sparkly and beautiful on the lids. So this one is Balance, this one is Manifest It, and this one is... Oh my god, I'm already getting glitter on my sweater. Are you kidding me? I don't even know how I did that. Oh my lord. So yeah, it's beautiful. What else was I saying? We have Balanced, Manifest It, and Reflect. So just really beautiful shades, and I absolutely have been obsessed with this palette. It's just a really beautiful, and I think the reason why I love it is because it's such a nice cool tone / warm tone palette for winter time and also the fall time because it's still fall. But I just feel like I'm going to be reaching for this palette quite often in the winter time as well. And there are some of the mattes. They don't swatch the greatest, but on the eyes, they definitely build up really nicely. So this one is Perfect Harmony, and this one is Empowered. Just really smooth, good ColourPop quality that I'm used to, and I really love it. This is the last ColourPop palette I've picked up lately. They haven't really released anything. Like, I mean, I'm glad that they slowed down, but I kind of wanted a new, like, Christmas collection from them. Like, I mean, it was great that they re-released the Rudolph collection, and I love the Rudolph collection. That's one of my favorite palettes ever from ColourPop. That palette's phenomenal. But I was like, are they going to come out with a new Christmas collection in, like, December or something? Or maybe the end of November? That would be fun, but I don't know, they've been kind of boring lately. So I'm like, can we, like, release something exciting maybe? And then the last palette I wanted to talk about is the one on my eyes today, and that is the Glaminatrix Cosmetics Rich Romantic palette. I know I posted my first impressions on this pretty late, but I definitely did use it a few times in October, maybe like 3 times, and then this month I've used it a bit more. But I am wearing it on my eyes today, and I actually ended up liking this palette way more than I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to get bored because there's not quite enough mattes in here that I would rather have than like some of these shifty multi-chrome shades. But oh my god, these shimmers are so stunning on the lids, and the mattes are so nice and pigmented that I take back everything that I said about it. It's stunning, and I really think that I'm going to use this palette more in the springtime. But I just finished testing out all the shades today, and I'm actually glad that I did that so that I could give you guys my full review of it. It's a stunning palette. If you were thinking about doing or getting a Glaminatrix palette that was a little bit more toned down, not as colorful, this is absolutely stunning. I also love the Nearly Natural palette, but I don't know if that palette's being sold anymore. There's a couple that they discontinued. I'm not sure, but this is a beautiful spring release for Glaminatrix. The reason why I really ended up liking this palette more is because it has this row of deepening mattes, but this row of shimmers are so phenomenally stunning on the lids. And this top row is so nice too. The only thing that I wish that they had in this palette was, I kind of wish that they swapped out this shade that I'm wearing on my lid today for another pink shade. Like maybe something a bit deeper than this pink matte would have been perfect. Even this shade I would have kept in here because I like that there's a brow bone highlight in here, so it's a standalone for me. But if they just had a different pink shade, I would have loved this palette even more. But this rose shimmers are so stunning. But I've been pairing this palette a lot with the Nearly Natural palette, so I've been using that palette more. And I've been using like 1 or 2 shades from that. And also with the Trick or Treat palette from Oden's Eye, I've been pairing it a few times with the original Hella palette. And I've used like 1 or 2 shades every time I use the Trick or Treat palette as well. So that's why I like the Trick or Treat palette more in this one over the Natasha Denona palette. And same thing with this one is that this one I don't have to pair with anything because I have all my quintessential neutrals in here. But if I want to like pull in another matte shade to this palette, I know that this palette is more of a pairing palette, but these shimmers are so stunning that it doesn't really matter to me. And you have enough base mattes in here to build up the depth that I want. So I find it an absolute joy to work with both palettes, and it doesn't like take the joy out of me doing my makeup. So let's swatch some of these stunning shimmers. I know so many people have raved about the Natasha Denona palette, but I really just don't like it at all. So this one is Magnetic, this one is Seductive, and this one is Charming. They are so insanely smooth as well. Oh, and they're so smooth when you apply them to the lids too. They're just gorgeous. Look at that. Look at that. They just put the other shimmers to shame. I mean, Oden's Eye is holding its own though, but look at those shifts. Aren't they so pretty? So this one is Magnetic. This one is Seductive, and this one is Charming. Just absolutely stunning. And the mattes that I'm wearing on my crease today are just so saturated and beautiful. So I'm wearing Devotion in the crease. Then I darken up the crease more. I cannot read this font from this angle, sorry. Lover to deepen it up, and then I use this shade Passion on the outer corners, and then for my lid was the one that I pointed to before, which is the shade Romantic, which is a stunning like peachy shift of a duochrome, but it's kind of very similar to Charming, because actually when I swatched these two, they're very similar. But this one is a bit lighter, but they both have like a peachy shift to them, like an orangey shift that I don't think we really needed both. And then I just put Captivating on the brow bone, and then I used that shade Charming on my inner corners, and that's all I did today. And it's still a stunning look, so. And I just want to swatch a couple of the mattes. I should have swatched one of the purples, but it's okay. Very smooth. I think that this matte formula is even better than the one that's in the Nearly Natural palette. These are a bit softer and more pigmented, but I still love the Nearly Natural palette. That's still like one of my most used palettes of the entire year, if not my most used palette of the year. So yeah, love this palette. Now let's start talking about some other things, but I don't think there's really going to be that many things. Okay, so again, I don't really have that many products to talk about. I really have been trying to slow down with makeup purchases. Mostly everything that I would like to talk about, I didn't buy until the beginning of November because of the Sephora VIB sale, and that's the only thing that I allowed myself to shop in this month. And I did buy the Merry Christmas Eve palette from Oden's Eye, which I am waiting for, so excuse me. Let's just talk about the few products that I have been loving. So first up is the Glossier foundation. I have worn this quite a few times in the past month. I've worn it at least once a week. It's a great foundation. If you want something that doesn't feel heavy but gives really, really great coverage, I would say that this is a good medium to full coverage, but I think this is finally like the first almost full coverage foundation that I have enjoyed, because I don't love full coverage whatsoever. I love a good light to medium coverage. I would say like light medium. This is more like light coverage that I'm wearing today because I'm wearing my ColourPop Tinted Moisturizer. But this is a great foundation. I love using it for work. I love using it for like just going out with my friends. And it's just a great foundation. It lasts really well, and I really love the coverage. And then the concealer I wanted to shout out was the Tower 28 one. I've also been using the Haus Labs one and the Makeup by Mario. But this one is like the perfect everyday concealer. It's so good. It's really, really, really worth the hype. It's super hydrating, blends out beautifully, gives beautiful coverage. It's just a fantastic everyday concealer. So I've been continuing to use it and love it. So love that as well. And then when it comes to blushes, I don't really have any bronzers. Well, the one bronzer I've been reaching for again that I haven't used in a while is the NYX Matte Bronzer. So this one is the shade Medium, and I've just been using this quite a bit, and I've been also really enjoying this one. It's very pigmented, and it's just a nice shade for me. It's a bit warmer than what I'm used to, and a bit more like tan, but I like it. It's a nice bronzer. Very, very smooth. Very good formula. I mean, the drugstore, do not sleep on the drugstore, okay? The drugstore has great friggin' products. I mean, I haven't bought drugstore makeup in quite a while because I have so much makeup, like it's not even funny. But this is a great bronzer. I've just been using my Haus Labs bronzer, my Pat McGrath, like all the usual ones, so we don't need to talk about those. And then for blush, I've been going back to the Blend Bunny palette quite a lot, but I talked about that last month and I raved about it. It's just such a spectacular palette. And then the Rose Ink blush in the shade Delphine, I was using quite a bit again. And this is such a good like cream blush, and I really, really like this one. I've used this one quite a bit since I've gotten it. I think at least 4 or 5 times. And it's just a really nice cream blush formula. It feels a little bit gritty when you dip your finger into it, but it's such a beautiful everyday blush shade. It's just so good. So I really like this too. This is still the only product that I've tried from Rose Ink, but it's a really, really good blush. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to all the things that I've been loving. Were just things that I picked up last month. But I did want to mention this highlighter. I'm pretty much mentioning every Oden's Eye product I picked up because they were all so good. So I did get one of the other highlighters from the Soul Moon collection because I absolutely love the one that I have, that I'm like, I need another shade. And also, since I was ordering the palette already, I was like, I really want to get another one of these highlighters because they are so stunning. So this one is the shade Pink Star. I don't know if you guys actually see it in the pan. There we go. That's better. So it's like a pinkish, greenish, purple reflect to it, and it's so stunning. I've used this at least 3 times since I've gotten it, you know, because I only use it when I wear like more pinkier looks or more like purpley looks. I don't know why I cannot pick up the reflections of anything today on my camera. Hello. It reflects like bluish green pink. It's so stunning. There we go. That's better. Look at that. Isn't that so pretty? It's just with Oden's Eye, like, I don't have to worry about like the pigmentation. I don't have to worry about it going on and you could see it or for it to last. It's absolutely stunning, and I will pull these out whenever I need a highlighter to last, or I'll use the Blend Bunny Knock to Loosen palette. That palette is phenomenal. I still reach for this all the time. And also the blush palette, again, is just so good. Blend Bunny has become like one of my everyday ride or die favorite brands, and This is probably my favorite thing I've tried from them the whole year, and I can't believe I put off getting one of these blush palettes for so long, and I absolutely love this palette. The pigmentation is ridiculous, and they're just so smooth to blend, and they last the entire time you're wearing them. They do not fade on the cheeks whatsoever. Just a stunning palette. I had to give it a little shout out because it's just so good. And now we're just going to move on to lips, and that's about it. And then I'm going to talk about one or two books because y'all didn't know I've been loving books this past month or two. So the two lippies I really want to talk about are the two from the Odensai collection from Angelica Nyquist. I'm actually really happy that they decided to release something other than eyeshadow palettes with a collaborator this year, and also in general. Because honestly, they haven't really released any other products besides eyeshadow palettes and single shadows this year. That's literally the only other thing they've launched. But also, Odensai definitely launched more this year as compared to last year. Like last year, they only had like 3 launches, and then everybody lost their shit with the Merry Christmas palettes. And I'm so glad I knew that they were bringing those back. I predicted that like months ago. I was like, it would be really stupid if they didn't bring those back because everybody freaking wanted those. But I'm so glad that they decided to do a lip collection with her. And I'm like, finally, another product from Odensai. Like, I love Nomad and I love Odensai, but sometimes it's like, Odensai definitely has more products available, like blushes and highlights, but they also need to come out with some different blushes at some point. It's been like a month and a half, a year and a half since they came out with the Soul Moon collection. It's like, I want to see more cheek products because they're so good. So, anyway, the two products I picked up from the lip collection from Angelica Nyquist were the two liquid lipsticks. So this one is Shadow Creature, and this one is Swamp Fog. Oh, these are so pretty, and they're so good. And I think Angelica did such a phenomenal job of doing shades that are so inclusive that pretty much any skin tone can wear these. Like, this is such a great nude for someone with a deeper complexion. It's even like a great like brownie nude on a medium tone complexion. And then this shade is so stunning on like anybody. Deep dark skin. Oh my god, this red would be stunning. So this one is Swamp Fog, and this one is Shadow Creature. And everybody knows that Angelica loves her mustardy, yellowy brown shades, so that's why she wanted to do that shade. And then this shade, she wanted to do a brick red that was wearable, not like a super bright red. She likes these kind of reds as well, but it's not like too deep of a red, so you can like just get away with it, that it's not like too vampy and dark. And I think she did a phenomenal job. And they're both so comfortable on the lips, and they do feel like lip clouds. Like this one is a lip cloud as well from Glossier, and I think that the Odensai ones are a little better. These also go on a little bit drier. They're not as liquidy. This one from Glossier is really nice though. This one is the shade Curve, and I did use this a couple more times this past month. This one is very, very smooth and creamy on the lips and very comfortable as well, and I really, really like this one too. So that one is Curve, so it is a similar formula to the Odensai, but I think the Odensai ones are a bit more matte. This one's definitely more of like a lip cloud. And then the last lippy I wanted to talk about was, I just wanted to shout out this Blend Bunny one. This is the matte lip cream in the shade Doll Face. I've also been using the lip liner a ton this past month. I probably should have shouted out some lip liners, but I don't feel like going through lip liners right now. Then I have all the same lip liners anyway. I did pick up the Makeup Forever liners this past month, but again, that was this past month. That's the only new lip liner I got. But this formula is so good. I think I used this like twice in October, and it's such a phenomenally comfortable liquid lipstick, but it's also so beautiful and smooth on the lips, and it lasts such a long time on the lips. Like, it really does not come off after you eat. It's just such a good lip product. Blend Bunny just knows how to make everything right. And then the last product I wanted to talk about is this Kaja Juicy Glass Gloss. I didn't really use this too much this past month, but it is a really nice clear gloss, and I'm probably just going to use it to coat my lips now since my Amicole one is pretty much like completely out. I'm so upset. I loved it, but this is pretty much empty, so I'm going to count that as an empty. But yeah, that is all the makeup favorites. Now let's talk about 2 books. Okay, so 2 book favorites. Before I talk about these 2, I just wanted to say I also finished Midnight Library last month. And that was the first book that I actually read in a month. And I've only read 3 books this year, but I'm almost done with this 4th one that I'm about to talk about. And it's so funny that it has 4th in the title, and it's the 4th book that I read. I actually just realized that. I was like, I didn't even realize that I picked the perfect book to read. No. But ever since I finished Midnight Library from Matt Haig, I cannot believe how much I love reading now. I read 2 of his books this year. It took me, The Radleys was the first book I picked up in like 10 years. And I decided to read that, but that took me like 5 months to get through because I wasn't reading every single night. I might read like 5 pages every night just when I go to sleep. Now I cannot spend any spare moment that I have without reading. I read in the morning, I read at night, I read when I have any spare time whatsoever, I'm reading. So after I finished the second book from him, Midnight Library, which is actually his best-selling book besides How to Stop Time, which I really want to read as well, I picked up this book from Christina Lauren, and this is called Love in Other Words. I read this in a week and a half. Not even a week and a half. I started it November 1st, and I think I finished it on November 9th. So, like, not even 10 days. And I finished this one morning when I couldn't sleep, and I loved it. This was such a good book. This was my first dive into romance novels. And the reason why I wanted to read this one first, I wanted to read a Christina Lauren book because I first heard of her because of Batty Bean. And I've been watching Batty Bean's Get Ready With Me reading roundup videos every single month, but I hadn't decided to read anything until The Radleys, which is she hasn't even read any Matt Haig books, but I decided to start with a romance novel from one of her recommendations, and she said this wasn't just her favorite romance novel, but also one of her favorite books that she read in the entire year. So I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna give this one a shot. It was so good. It's about Elliot, and I'll just read the synopsis. Macy Sorensen is settling into ambitious, if emotionally tepid routine, work hard as a new pediatrics resident, planning her wedding to an older, financially secure man, keep her head down and heart tucked away. When she runs into Elliot Petropoulos, the first and only love of her life, the careful bubble she's constructed begins to dissolve. I don't have to read the whole thing, but basically it goes back and forth between her childhood with Elliot, because they were childhood friends, and her present time with her fiance. And then she ends up running into Elliot again like 10 years later, and it goes back and forth in each chapter from the past to the present. And I loved it. I thought that was such a good way to tell their story. But also, she's such a great writer. It's actually two women. One's name is Christina, and the other one is named Lauren, so that's why their name is Christina Lauren. It was just so good. I really liked it, and I really want to read The Unhoneymooners after I finish the books that I'm reading currently. But the next one, and the one I'm talking about and currently reading, is Fourth Wing. I know that there's a lot of mixed opinions about this book, but this is one of the most popular books of the entire year. It's also one of the best-selling books, and it was the #1 best-selling book in August. So it's extremely popular. I haven't finished it yet, and I'm not giving any spoilers of either of these books. I'm just talking about them. You can figure out on your own if you want to read them or not. I'm not giving away every single detail. I'm just giving you a brief synopsis. So I think I don't love her writing style as much, but this is such an incredibly intriguing book, and I cannot wait to finish it. I'm on page 406. So I only have like 90 pages left. So I'm hoping to bang this out either tonight or tomorrow and just finish it because I only have like 90 pages left. So that's the fastest I've ever gotten through a book. I mean, Love in Other Words was a shorter read. I think this was only 400. How long was this book? It was 390. Actually, it was 400 pages, but the font's a lot bigger, and the chapters aren't as long, and like, you know, it's a lot easier to get through this book. This Fourth Wing is like, you know, a lot longer, and well, that's not a great way to show you guys. Like, they're a lot longer pages, but I really, really like this, and they're turning this into an Amazon series, so I cannot wait to read it. And then as soon as I'm done with Fourth Wing, I am going to read the sequel, which is Iron Flame. This just came out this past month. This came out like a couple of weeks ago. So I'm so happy I decided to start reading Fourth Wing when the second one had just come out. So I was like, I'm just going to pick up both, and that's going to be my next books that I read. So with Fourth Wing, it says, anyone else feel like changing their mind? Xaden shouts, scanning the remaining rows of cadets with the same shrewd gaze of his navy blue dragon behind him. No, excellent. Roughly half of you will be dead by this time next summer. And basically it's about Violet Sorrengail, which she is supposed to be a scribe, but her mother actually wants her to become a dragon rider. And the whole premise of this book is that you either bond with your dragon or die trying. Like, even after you bond with a dragon, you can still get killed. Like, people get killed in this book on a daily basis. But the intriguing part of this book is to see who lives and who dies. And basically the slogan is, I love the slogan. It says, fly or die. You fly with your dragon or you die trying. You can also fall off your dragon and die. So it's so good, and it's about Violet and Xaden. They are the two main characters. And Xaden wants to kill her, but then you find out way more about him and her as the book unfolds. And it is so good. I love it. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at SBW819 to check out my Poshmark at the same handle. Also, my show favorite was 6 Feet Under. I finished that, I think, a week or two ago. So then all my other spare time has been for reading, because I did finish 6 Feet Under. And that was like the last show I wanted to watch, because I kind of wanted a break from shows after that. Probably the best show I've ever watched. It was just so phenomenal. I've never been so attached to characters emotionally as this show. It would make you cry like devastatingly for like 10. There was one part where I had to pause it for a good hour, and I couldn't watch the next episode until I just cried. I was crying for like half hour after I saw the scene. I was like, oh my God. But it's just a phenomenal show. I absolutely loved it. All the characters are absolutely amazing. Brilliantly written. But also, after you cry, they have such an amazing way of bringing you right back and making a joke. But it's so crazy that it's not uncomfortable. But it's just them making a joke to cope with what just happened. Or they'll let you process your emotions and let you feel what you're feeling after seeing a completely traumatizing scene, and then maybe like 20 minutes later, then they'll have a scene that's funny. And that's what I love about the show, is that like it's perfectly timed to your emotions. And I'm like, it was just so good. I loved it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know what your favorites were this month, or if you've tried any of these products. If you've read either of these books, please let me know. And I hope you guys have a great day. Bye. Oh, and happy eating. Well, I think I'll definitely see you guys before Thanksgiving, but my sister comes next week and I'm very excited. So bye.